Hey, and welcome back to Wild Mythology. I welcome you to the channel with bread and salt. For today's video, we're going to cover the family tree of Zeus from Greek mythology. But before we get to that, don't forget to join this month's mythology giveaway for Neil Gaiman's book on Norse mythology. An awesome 300-page book filled with the most famous myths, gods, and creatures from Norse mythology. All you have to do to join our giveaway is subscribe and leave a comment on this video. Plus, somewhere in this video is our mythology scavenger question. Answer the question correctly in the comments and you'll get an extra ballot for a chance to win the giveaway. So keep an eye or your ears out for that. Now, I think it's time to get to the children of Zeus. As king of the Greek gods and the lord of Olympus, as well as the god of thunder, lightning, law, justice, and the sky, Zeus is one of the most famous and most powerful deities in all of mythology. And while important myths involving Zeus include the downfall of Cronus and the Titans, the punishment of Prometheus, the war against the giants, and the death match with Typhon, the king of monsters, the most famous and well-known myths about the thunder god usually involve him seducing and impregnating different women. It is from these women that we get the children of Zeus, who are some of the most renowned gods and mortals in Greek mythology, including 7 members of the Olympians, legendary heroes, and powerful kings. With easily over 50 confirmed children, Zeus is one of the most fertile gods in Greek mythology, and today we're going to cover the most famous offspring that came from Zeus's loins. Beginning with his parents, Zeus is the youngest child of Cronus and Rhea, the king and queen of the Titans. With the combined might of his elder siblings, Hestia, Hades, Demeter, Poseidon, and Hera, as well as many other deities, Zeus and his family were able to overthrow the Titans and become the new rulers of the universe. After the war with the Titans, Zeus began to sire his immortal children. Zeus's first love and wife was the nymph Metis, one of the elder daughters of Oceanus and Tethys, the titan of the sea and the titaness of fresh water. As well as being Zeus's lover, Metis was also his first advisor and played an important role in the Titans' defeat. After the war, Zeus married her, but it was prophesied that someday Metis would have a child that would overthrow Zeus as king. So Zeus tricked Metis into transforming into a fly. Once she did so, Zeus swallowed her, not knowing that she was already pregnant. Over the years, Zeus would occasionally receive great jolts of headaches. These occurrences continued year after year for long periods of time, resulting in Zeus screaming in pain for days on end. Eventually, Zeus demanded that his son Hephaestus cut his head open, so Hephaestus took an axe and split open his father's head. Surprisingly though, a full-grown goddess wearing full armor and wielding a spear and shield emerged from the crack in Zeus's skull. This woman was Athena, one of the 12 Olympians and the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafts. Athena was Zeus's favorite child and was his advisor when it came to war. Athena played important roles in many myths, including the punishment of Medusa and Arachne, the judgment of the Trojan prince Paris, and the decision for the patron god of Athens. She was also a protector of heroes and aided Perseus, Odysseus, and Heracles in many of their adventures. After swallowing Metis, but before Athena emerged from his skull, Zeus married his aunt, the titaness of divine law, Themis, who had not supported the other titans in the war. She married Zeus out of duty to keep good relations between Zeus and the remaining titans. Together they had a set of triplets known as the Horai, the goddesses of order and the caretakers of the seasons. The sisters were Dike, the goddess of moral justice, Eunomia, the goddess of law and legislation, and Eirene, the goddess of peace. After siring children with Themis, Zeus ended their marriage and went on to sleep with the nymph Eurynome, one of the elder children of Oceanus and Tethys, like Zeus's first wife. Together they had 3 girls who became known as the Charities, or the Graces, the goddesses of grace, joy, beauty, and creativity. The eldest was Euphrosyn, the goddess of joy and cheer, followed by Thalia, the goddess of festivity and banquets, And finally, Aglaea, the goddess of charm and grace, as well as the second wife of the smith god Hephaestus. Usually the three Charities were in charge of parties and banquets on Olympus, as well as being the attendants of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. The next woman Zeus fell in love with was another aunt, Mnemosyne, the Titaness of memory. Though Mnemosyne wasn't interested in Zeus, that didn't stop the thunder god. Disguising himself as a shepherd, Zeus seduced Mnemosyne and they slept together for 9 consecutive nights. Soon after, Mnemosyne gave birth to 9 daughters over 9 days. These daughters were the 9 Muses, the goddesses of the arts, literature, and science. Their names were Calliope, the muse of epic poetry and the future mother of Orpheus, Clio, the muse of history, Erato, the muse of love poetry, Euterpe, the muse of music and flutes, Melpomene, the muse of tragedy, Polyhymnia, the muse of hymns, Terpsichore, the muse of dance, Thalia, the muse of comedy, and finally Urania, the muse of astronomy. They were also connected with Apollo because of their connection to the arts, and because he was also the god of music. After Mnemosyne, Zeus became entranced by his sister Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. After a night of passion that possibly included Zeus transforming into a snake for some reason, the two had a beautiful daughter. Their daughter was Persephone, the goddess of spring, vegetation, and the future queen of the underworld. Being the favorite daughter of Demeter, Persephone spent most of her time with her mother until the day she was kidnapped by Hades, the lord of the underworld. After making a mistake by eating some pomegranates, Zeus declared that Persephone could only spend half the year with her mother. The other half she had to be down in the underworld with her husband Hades. It is after he sired Persephone that Zeus married his most famous lover, Hera, the queen of Olympus and the goddess of marriage. After the war against the Titans, Hera went to stay with her uncle Oceanus. When she returned, Zeus was instantly enamored, but no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't able to seduce Hera. You see, she wasn't interested in becoming another one of Zeus's conquests. Luckily for Zeus, he was able to make Hera promise that she would marry him if she ever confessed her love for him. Based on that promise, Zeus came up with a plan. One night, above Mount Olympus, Zeus created a humongous thunderstorm and then transformed himself into a cuckoo bird. Pretending to be injured, the transformed Zeus flew into Hera's room. Seeing the injured, soaked bird, Hera dried him off, fed him some nectar, and then cuddled the bird to her chest as they drifted off to sleep. After spending many lovely days together, Hera declared that she had come to love the cuckoo bird. The instant Hera said that, Zeus retook his godly form, revealing himself to be the bird all along. Impressed with his cunning and remembering her promise, Hera married Zeus. And not long after, their first child was born, Ares, one of the 12 Olympians and the god of war. Unlike Athena, who focused on war based on military strategy, Ares' brand of war focused on valor, brutality, and bloodlust. Ares was heavily involved in the Trojan War, and was also the secret lover of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. At least until Hephaestus, Aphrodite's husband, caught the two in the act with an unbreakable net. The other children Zeus and Hera had together were Enyo, the goddess of war and close companion to her brother Ares, Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth and midwifery, who worked closely with her mother and Artemis to deliver children, and Hebe, the goddess of youth and the cupbearer for the gods until she married her half-brother Heracles. The final child of Zeus and Hera was Hephaestus, one of the 12 Olympians and the god of blacksmiths, metalworking, and fire. Hephaestus was unfortunately born disfigured, causing Hera to find him disgusting, which led to her throwing him off Mount Olympus. This fall caused Hephaestus to heavily injure his leg, causing it to become lame. Years after his fall, Hephaestus returned with gifts for the gods and a trap for Hera. Eventually, though, the two made up, and Hephaestus even saved his mother, who was being punished by Zeus for trying to overthrow him, an action that made his father furious. With Zeus finally being tied down, you would think that would be the end of his womanizing ways. Well, if you thought that, then you're dead wrong. because not long after marrying Hera, Leto, the Titaness of motherhood, caught Zeus's eye. Finding the thunder god to be very charming, Leto slept with Zeus and became pregnant with twins. Unfortunately for Leto, the queen found out about the affair. Jealous and outraged that Zeus had broken his vows, Hera cursed Leto, a curse that forbade the Titaness from ever giving birth on land. This caused Leto great strife, since she was turned away by every nature spirit as she searched for a place to give birth. Luckily, Leto found the floating island of Delos, and it was there that she gave birth to Artemis, who then helped deliver her brother Apollo. The two deities were both members of the Olympians and were known as the Archer Twins. Artemis, the goddess of the moon, the hunt, and childbirth, and Apollo, the god of the sun, prophecies, healing, and the arts. Separate, the twins were involved in many myths, such as the slaying of the dragon Python by Apollo and the transformation of Actaeon by Artemis. As for myths that involved both of the twins together, well, let's just say Queen Niobe of Thebes shouldn't have insulted Leto. Maybe all of her 12 children would still be alive and not filled with arrows. Another woman that caught Zeus's attention after his marriage to Hera was Maia, the eldest of the 7 Pleiades, who were the children of the Titan Atlas. Maia was a secluded deity who avoided the Olympians, but Zeus had seen her secluded in the mountains when he was enjoying a flight over the earth in his eagle form. So in the dead of night, Zeus snuck out of the bed he shared with Hera and slept with Maia, resulting in her giving birth to Hermes, the Olympian god of roads, thieves, and cunning. He was also the messenger of the gods and the father of Pan, the god of the wild. Even as a child, Hermes was quite intelligent and tricky. He once stole Apollo's sacred cattle and then bargained for the cows by making his half-brother a lyre out of a tortoise shell, an action that cooled Apollo's anger over the theft quite quickly. As the messenger of the gods, it was Hermes' responsibility to deliver messages, as well as ferry mortals from one god to another, or to the underworld. Damn, that's a lot of kids, and guess what? We're only halfway through. So far, we've only been talking about the most famous of Zeus's immortal children and immortal lovers, but in mythology, most of Zeus's children were born to mortal women. And unfortunately for Hera, Zeus was a sucker for a pretty mortal lady. So now it's time to explore the demigod children of Zeus, some who even raised themselves to the level of godlyhood. But before we get to that, it's time for our mythology scavenger question. Here's the question: which Greek hero correctly answered the riddle of the Greek Sphinx? Make sure to comment your answer so you can get an extra ballot to win this month's giveaway. Now, back to the children of Zeus. One of the first mortal women that Zeus lusted for was Io, who was a priestess of Hera. But when Hera found out that Zeus and Io were having an affair, Zeus transformed Io into a cow in order to hide her from his wife. Unfortunately, Hera was not fooled and acquired the cow Io. Luckily, Hermes was able to save her, and eventually Zeus turned Io back into her human form. Together they had Epiphus, who went on to become the king of Egypt, as well as being the boy that doubted the half-blood child of Helios, Phaethon. This doubt caused Phaethon to fly his father's sun chariot and almost burn the entire world. What's special about Io is that she's the ancestor to a great bloodline that includes Dionysus, Perseus, and Heracles. And as you're about to find out, Io wasn't the only member of this bloodline that Zeus slept with. Europa, who was the great-great-granddaughter of Io and the sister of Cadmus, was a great beauty and so of course caught Zeus's eye. So Zeus disguised himself as a white bull and went up to Europa. Liking the bull, Europa got on its back, allowing the bull Zeus to run to the sea. Zeus then swam all the way to Crete, the island where he was born. There he revealed his true form to Europa, and together they had 3 children. After giving birth to her 3 children, Europa became queen of Crete by marrying King Asterius, who didn't mind becoming the stepfather to Zeus's children. The eldest of the 3 children was Sarpedon, followed by Minos, and then Rhadamanthus. When their stepfather died, Sarpedon and Minos fought for the Crete throne, with Minos coming out as the victor. After he won the crown, he banished his brothers from Crete. Sarpedon, who had been gifted with a long lifespan, went on to fight in many wars, including the Trojan War. Rhadamanthus went on to marry Heracles' mother, Alcmene, and after he died, Rhadamanthus became one of the judges of the dead in the underworld. As for Minos, well, he became a very famous king in Greek mythology. Not soon after becoming king, he insulted Poseidon, who made Minos' wife fall in love with a bull, and thus give birth to the Minotaur. Embarrassed that his wife slept with a cow and gave birth to a monster, Minos ordered the great builder Daedalus to make a great labyrinth. Once it was done, Minos put the Minotaur into the maze, and then imprisoned Daedalus and his son Icarus so no one would know about the Minotaur's origins. Unfortunately for Minos, his daughter Ariadne betrayed him by helping the hero Theseus kill the Minotaur. Plus, Daedalus and Icarus were able to escape from their confinement. Like his brother, Minos also became one of the judges of the dead after he died. The next woman who had a famous child with Zeus was Semele, the daughter of Cadmus and the goddess Harmonia, as well as a descendant of Io. When Zeus met Semele, he was very upfront about who he was. This caused Semele to brag to her sisters and friends. The bragging, of course, reached the ears of Hera, who disguised herself as an old crone and appeared before Semele. When Semele told the disguised crone about being pregnant with Zeus's child, Hera called BS and made Semele doubt herself. So the next time Semele met with Zeus, she made him make an unbreakable vow on the river Styx to give her anything she wished for. Zeus instantly agreed and made the vow. Semele then asked Zeus to show her his godly form so that she would know for sure that he was the thunder god. Zeus begged for her to make a different wish because mortals couldn't survive watching a god take their divine form. Unfortunately, Semele refused, and Zeus was forced to show her, causing her to disintegrate. Luckily, Zeus was able to save the child Semele was pregnant with by sewing the child to his thigh. And then, a few months later, the half-god Dionysus was born from his father's thigh. Dionysus would go on to be the first to discover how to make wine from the vine. He would become a student of his grandmother Rhea, and would also go on to lead a cult that focused on wine, parties, and bringing joy to others. After gaining godhood and becoming one of the Olympians, Dionysus journeyed to the underworld to save his mother's soul. Once finding her soul, he brought Semele back to the living and made her immortal. He also later on married Ariadne and made her immortal after she was heartbroken and abandoned by the hero Theseus. Another woman from the bloodline of Io that caught Zeus's attention was Danae, the daughter of King Acrisius. Danae's father was told a prophecy that said he would be killed by his daughter's son, so he locked Danae away. But Zeus would not be stopped, and he impregnated Danae with a son named Perseus. Afraid for his life, but not wanting to anger the gods by killing his blood, the king put Danae and Perseus into a wooden chest and cast them out to sea. When the mother and son washed onto shore, a fisherman found them and raised Perseus. After Perseus grew up, the fisherman's brother, who was a king, decided to pursue the hand of Danae, but she would have nothing to do with him. Annoyed with the king, Perseus demanded that he stop trying to seduce his mother. So the king agreed to stop if Perseus could kill the monster Medusa and bring back her head. Perseus did so with the help of some of the gods, and on his way back home he saved his future wife Andromeda from the sea monster Cetus. When he returned home, he found that the king had forced Danae to marry him. Seething with anger, Perseus used Medusa's head to turn the king into stone. He then took Danae and his new wife Andromeda to the kingdom of his original birth, only to find that King Acrisius had abandoned the kingdom in fear of the prophecy, thus making Perseus the new king. Funny enough, some years later, Perseus killed his grandfather, King Acrisius, by accident during some athletic games. Perseus was throwing a discus when a sudden burst of wind made the discus hit his grandfather, thus fulfilling the prophecy. After siring Perseus with Danae, one of Perseus's granddaughters was the next woman to catch the thunder god's notice. The woman's name was Alcmene, who was already married to a man. But the lustful Zeus didn't care about that, so he disguised himself as Alcmene's husband and slept with her. When Alcmene fell asleep, Zeus returned to Olympus. But by chance that very night, Alcmene's husband returned from war and also slept with her. A while later, Alcmene found herself to be pregnant with twins, one child belonging to Zeus and the other belonging to her husband. The night before the twins' birth, Zeus loudly made an oath on Mount Olympus that the first child of Perseus's bloodline to be born that night would be a king of kings. Hearing this and knowing of Zeus's affair, Hera stopped her daughter Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, from helping Alcmene. Hera did not want another one of Zeus's sons to be a high king. Hera then visited Alcmene's aunt and made her have her son Eurystheus prematurely, thus making him the king of kings according to Zeus's oath. After Eurystheus was born, Alcmene gave birth to her twins, Alcetus, the son of Zeus, and Iphicles, the son of Alcmene's husband. While you might not recognize his original name, Alcetus would go on to become the greatest hero in all of Greek mythology, and his second name, Heracles, would be known throughout time. After a couple of months, Hera sent 2 serpents to kill Heracles, but the 8-month Heracles took care of the snakes by strangling them. Fearing that Hera would punish her for unknowingly siring Zeus's child, Alcmene abandoned Heracles in the woods. He was found by Athena, who came up with a clever plan to help Heracles. She brought him to Hera, who did not recognize the baby Heracles, and told the queen that he was abandoned. Out of pity, Hera nursed baby Heracles, but he accidentally bit Hera too hard, causing her to jolt away. This caused the excess milk from her breast to spray across the heavens and form into the Milky Way. Athena then returned Heracles to his mother and foster father, knowing that Hera's milk would make Heracles gain the strength of 1,000 men. From there on, Heracles' life would be filled with violence, glory, and tragedy. Out of all of Zeus's bastard children, Hera hated Heracles the most. She threw obstacle after obstacle at the demigod, and even cursed him with madness that made him kill his family, forcing him to perform 12 labors in atonement. After all of this and many other adventures, Heracles' downfall was his 3rd wife. One day, Heracles shot a centaur that tried to steal his wife with an arrow dipped in Hydra blood. Before the centaur died, he gave the 3rd wife his blood-soaked tunic, and told her that the tunic would make Heracles never stray from her. Years later, she heard a rumor that someone was trying to win Heracles' love, so she gave Heracles the blood-soaked tunic. When Heracles put on the tunic, the Hydra blood poisoned him, and he died. When his body was burned, Heracles rose to Olympus and was made into the god of courage and heroes. He then married his half-sister, Hebe. No woman was off-limits in Zeus's mind, not even a follower of Artemis. Callisto, who was the daughter of the first werewolf, Lycaon, was a follower of Artemis, meaning that she made a vow to never partake in the flesh of men. Knowing he wouldn't be able to seduce her in his form, Zeus transformed into Artemis and slept with Callisto. A few months later, while Artemis was bathing with her hunters and followers, she saw Callisto's pregnant belly. Outraged that Callisto had broken her vow, Artemis changed Callisto into a bear and banished her from the hunt. A few months later, Callisto gave birth to Arcas, who was ferried away by Zeus to be looked after by a nymph. Later on, after Lycaon was turned into a werewolf and his sons were killed in punishment for feeding Zeus human flesh, Arcas became the new king of Arcadia. One day, Arcas was out hunting when he found a bear in the sacred grove of Zeus. Just as he was about to unknowingly kill his own mother, Zeus intervened and changed Arcas into a bear. He then took Callisto and Arcas and made them into the constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. One of the evil children that Zeus sired was with Princess Elara. After impregnating Elara, Zeus hid her deep in the earth to hide her away from Hera. While in the earth, Elara's son grew to tremendous size inside her womb, causing Elara to die. This made Gaia, the primordial goddess of the earth, to carry the child to term, and not long after, the giant Tydeus was born. When Tydeus appeared on the surface, Hera whispered in his ear, telling the giant of the beautiful titan Leto. Intrigued by Hera's words, Tydeus found Leto and tried to rape her. Luckily, Leto's children, Artemis and Apollo, saved her and killed the giant. Tydeus was then punished to Tartarus, where he was stretched out over some rocks and tortured by 2 vultures who ate his liver every single day because it would keep growing back. A very similar punishment to the one Prometheus had to endure before being saved by Heracles. Another son of Zeus that would find himself punished in Tartarus was Tantalus, whose mother was Pluto. Tantalus was once invited to dine with the gods on Olympus. While he was there, he stole from the gods, as well as offering the gods a stew that had been made with chopped up pieces of his own son. Luckily, the gods were aware of this, and only Demeter had a bite because she was depressed about the loss of her daughter. Angry that his son would attempt such an act, Zeus had Tantalus' son revived and then threw a thunderbolt at Tantalus. Tantalus was then sent to Tartarus and had a personal punishment made just for him. Tantalus was required to stand in a puddle of water with a fruit tree just above his head. Anytime he reached for the fruit, the branch would rise just out of his reach. Whenever he bent down to drink some water, the water would disappear right before he could touch it. Another interesting form Zeus took to charm a woman was when he transformed into a swan to seduce Leto, who had also happened to be intimate with her husband the same day. Leto then laid 2 eggs, resulting in the birth of Helen and Clytemnestra from one egg, and Castor and Pollux from the other. And while all 4 children were Leto's, Helen and Pollux were the children of Zeus, and the other 2 were the children of Leto's husband. Pollux and Castor were extremely close and would go on to join Jason as members of the Argonauts. This created a family feud between the 4 men and eventually resulted in Castor and the 2 cousins' deaths. Holding his dead brother, Pollux prayed to his father Zeus that Castor not be separated from him. Hearing his son's pleas, Zeus took Pollux and Castor and placed them into the sky. Today, the twins are known as the constellation Gemini. And now we get to the face that launched 1,000 ships, the most beautiful mortal woman of all time, Hellen of Troy. After being declared the fairest goddess of all by the Trojan prince Paris, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, rewarded Paris with Helen, the queen of Sparta. It is said that Aphrodite made Helen fall in love with Paris, or helped Paris kidnap the queen. Either way, Helen was brought to Troy, leaving behind her husband and daughter. When her husband noticed her missing, he teamed up with his brother and called the kings of Greece to join them in war against the Trojans, thus beginning the famous Trojan War. After the fall of Troy, some versions of the myth say Helen returned to Sparta with her husband, while others say that Zeus sent Apollo to save his daughter during the fall of Troy. The final child of Zeus we'll be mentioning is Alexander of Macedonia, better known as Alexander the Great, who is said to be the child of Zeus and the woman Olympias. It is said that Olympias had a dream about her womb being struck by a lightning bolt, and then a great fire stretched over the earth. There's also a legend that says that Alexander was born on the same day that the temple of Artemis was burned down. Zeus had demanded that Artemis help with the birth of Alexander, and so she was too busy to stop the burning of her temple. Alexander the Great would go on to create one of the largest empires in history, conquering most of the known world at the time. He is also one of the only historical figures that is connected to the Greek gods. Funny enough, he also has connections to Egyptian mythology. After conquering Egypt, Alexander was made pharaoh and was said to be the son of the sun god Amun-Ra. After being crowned, Alexander told people his true father was Zeus Ammon. And there it is, I give you the children of Zeus. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like us to cover something from mythology, folklore, or legend, make sure to leave a comment and we'll add it to our video list. Well, that's all for now. Until next time on Wild Mythology.